Whether you're looking for answers to specific life questions or seeking to become the best version of you possible, welcome to the Mental Breakdown and Psych Reg podcast, where we offer insight, information, and strategies based upon research and years of practice as clinical psychologists. So sit back, have a listen, and get connected with our hosts, Dr. Berney Wilkinson and Dr. Richard Marshall. Welcome back. Yesterday we talked about the difference between facts and opinions, and we addressed some of the issues related to alternative facts. Mm-hmm. And today we're going to talk about another article that we found in Psychology Today that is related. Mm-hmm. And this article sort of becomes a little bit more political, but we're not going to go in that direction because there's some other things that we wanted to talk about this because it's a great topic of the issue of true believers.
Right. And we all know some true believers.
Right.
You might believe in the Chicago Cubs. You might believe in the New England Patriots. Okay. So it might be a sports fan. Mm-hmm. Might be religion. It might be some diet.
That the Earth is flat.
The Earth is flat. That we really didn't go to the moon. That was all staged in a sound stage somewhere in Hollywood. So we have these true believers. People who truly believe that certain things do exist, whether they do or not. But they are believers,
right?
Okay, and that's what this is about today. It's true believers,
right? And another reason that it's related to what we talked about yesterday is because, and this is just jumping right to it. So be ready.
I'm ready. Hold on.
That because many times what we find is that true believers are the ones that really latch on to what we refer to as alternative facts,
right?
As we spoke about yesterday, alternative facts, there's really no such thing as alternative facts. A fact is a fact, and then we have that spectrum that we talked about that goes from fact to belief or opinion.
Right.
But really, there's sort of a tipping point, like right around the very end of the fact-based end of that spectrum, where it's really no longer fact. It's just
because
things that are heavily supported, but not necessarily known as a fact, and then all the way down to belief.
And you mentioned yesterday that people are coming into the office and they're worried about these things. They're getting sort of anxious. People who tend to be anxious or tend to be more easily aroused, they tend to worry about this stuff. And I say, well, who's telling me the truth?
Right.
Okay, and that's what they're asking us.
Right.
How do I know, or should I just say, well, they're all lying?
Right.
No, you don't have to go to any of those extremes.
Right.
Okay, but you do have to spend some time separating what is fact from what is belief or opinion. Okay,
Right.
and there are certain facts. There's enough constancy. We said that yesterday. There's enough constancy in the world that all of us can agree on certain things because we all experience it and we all verify it the same way.
Right.
Okay. We can come up with 1,000 examples, but there's enough constancy in the world that we can agree on certain things, that certain things do exist. Now, there are other things that we have evidence for, but we have evidence in support of certain things and evidence that maybe come up with a different conclusion.
Right.
There's no evidence that Abraham Lincoln died of anything but a bullet.
Right.
There's nothing left to disprove on that one.
Right.
Okay. So put the facts in that column. Much of what we argue about are our opinions or our beliefs. Okay. That cannot be confirmed with our senses.
Right.
Okay. So if you're dealing with those, then your belief is legitimate. Okay. As long as it conforms to these facts.
Right.
Okay, you can't have if you have a belief that the Earth is flat, that's flawed thinking. Okay, but so don't confuse those two things.
Right.
But you talk about an agenda.
Right.
Okay, that's what you have to be careful of.
Right.
Somebody. We won't talk about gaslighting.
Right.
We won't talk about gaslighting, but gaslighting comes under that heading.
Right. Right. So as we're thinking about this idea of true believers, what we're really thinking about, as you said, is this idea that individuals will grab onto an idea a belief, a perspective, a worldview, a philosophy,
Right.
an ideology, and what happens. It's actually a very fascinating psychological process that happens, because what happens is that when someone becomes a true believer, what they end up doing is, again, this idea of alternative facts, they really latch onto and hold firm to those perspectives.
Right.
So despite the fact that there's plenty of evidence to disprove it,
right.
to combat a particular idea or perspective, despite the fact that there's no evidence to support the fact, the proposed fact, true believers hold on to these ideas, and almost in a as though they're, I want to say, as though their life depends on it. It's something that they hold on to regardless. I mean, it's just that they have to hold on to it.
Right.
And there are good and bad aspects to that. When we think about perhaps more things that happen more commonly, more on the positive side, we think of religion. With religion, that's a belief system.
Right.
People strongly believe in their religious views.
Right.
But there's not there's limited sensory evidence to support any particular religious perspective.
Right.
It's a complete
It's a belief system.
It's a complete belief system.
Right.
And so when we think about things that are proposed as facts related to religion, we start getting into that slippery slope of, people believe certain things happened because it's based upon their belief.
That's right.
And so they become true believers. They believe that whether it was that the world and everything was created in 7 specific days, 168 hours, or if they believe that, or if we go back to the Earth is round, there are things that we can certainly absolutely prove, and then there are other things that true believers believe in, and that you don't. It's very difficult to challenge or change those perspectives. That's because right. As true believers, that's your faith, that's your beliefs, that's your perspective, and you hold on to it firmly.
That's right. And you can't confirm with your senses. If you can't confirm it with your senses, then I don't think we should put it in the fact column.
Right.
Okay. How do we confirm it? Well, maybe some things have to be confirmed for us. Right. For example, I've never seen an atom, but I know lots of scientists who have electron microscopes who have. Okay.
Right.
So they've done it for me. And our senses might have to be enhanced by telescopes and microscopes and neuroimaging, but still, it's our senses.
Right.
Okay. So if it can be confirmed by everybody, okay, that goes in the fact column.
Right.
If it can't be confirmed with our senses, then we're moving toward the belief side of things.
Right.
Okay. And you're completely entitled to your beliefs.
Right.
But they're not facts.
Right.
Okay. And you don't. And we don't need to prove, if I'm a religious person, I don't need facts to support my beliefs.
Right.
My beliefs are my beliefs.
Right.
I don't need facts. And in fact, there are no facts. There might be facts for me.
Right.
But if I'm talking to a Hindu, the fact of Christianity is not a fact for that person.
Right.
Okay. We experience it differently.
Right.
So we're not all in agreement about any particular religion. In fact,
Right.
we have plenty of wars fought over the differences among religions.
Right.
Okay? Because they're based on different belief systems.
Right. And so the reason that we're talking about this idea of true believers is because we get into this situation in relationships, in interactions with other people, in
family members, parents and children,
where one person is a true believer of a particular thing, whether we're talking about religion or we're talking about politics or we're talking about educational views or whatever the case may be. There are those who are true believers in a particular idea, and they have this tendency, if not careful, of becoming very rigid, very restricted in how they view it. And what that does is that begins to turn people off from the idea of having discussions and having open dialogues about things and being able to work through problems.
That's right. And two very good examples of that are people will damage family relationships because they're arguing about their belief systems.
Right.
They'll give up relationships
Right.
to hold on to their belief system.
Right.
Okay.
And it doesn't even have to be anything as serious as religion
No.
or politics or anything like that. There are family members or family relationships that are ruined because of beliefs related to athletic teams.
Athletic team. That's right.
You
We're
know?
not only talking about religion here.
Right.
It could be, the house divided. In Florida, it's Florida versus Florida State. But you have that in every state.
Right. Alabama and Auburn.
Right. That's
yeah,
right.
It happens.
Right.
So it's the very famous one, right? Is Yankees and Red Sox.
Oh, yes.
And there are those, and let's not get into soccer because
Nobody knows anything
Tottenham.
about soccer.
Oh, Tottenham. But there are those who draw those lines,
Right.
and because they are true believers in that ideology, whatever that ideology is, and they hold so firm to it that they're immovable.
People get into fight. People have killed each other.
Right.
In parking lots of professional sports stadiums.
Right.
Over these rivalries. Okay. That's the problem that we get into with belief systems.
Right.
Whether it's a sports team or a religion, it doesn't matter what it is. You're entitled to your beliefs.
Right.
It's okay if you like Chelsea. As bad as they are, as poorly coached as they are, as incompetent as they are. He's going to hit me now. See, we're going to have a fight over this, right? You should go to Tottenham and see. So this is what it is. So we shouldn't allow our belief systems to damage our relationships. There's no reason to do that.
I'm not going to talk
unless
to you
it's
anymore.
soccer.
I'm not going to talk to you anymore.
The other place this comes up is when parents and children argue with each other.
Right.
Because inevitably, as our teenage children begin to separate from us, they begin to develop different belief systems. If you're a parent and your child is taking American history, the Japanese really did attack Pearl Harbor in December of 1941.
Okay.
Everybody knows that happened, okay? So that's a fact that you can talk to your children about. You're not going to argue about that.
Right.
I mean, that's what happened.
Right.
Okay? Doesn't matter. There was a war between the states in this country. We did have slavery. Those are all things that we don't argue. What do we argue with our children about? We argue about belief systems.
Right.
We argue about opinions about how things should be done. So when your children decide that they're atheists, for example, they have to come to their religious beliefs on their own.
Right.
Okay? This may be your belief, but you can't just impose. Well, you can, and you can certainly try to impose your belief system on them. It's not a fact for them.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And so we would advise that you stop arguing about belief systems
Right.
as though they were facts.
Right.
Okay? They're facts for you. They're not facts for them. They have to negotiate. They have to work through
Right.
their own religious beliefs.
Right.
Just as you did.
Right.
We all did our own. Okay?
Right.
And so they must arrive at their own, whether it's religion, whether it's sports teams, whether doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
They have to work through that themselves.
Right. And recognize, as we've talked about in other podcasts, that the goal of adolescence is to push those boundaries. I mean, they're going to push your belief system.
And to think for themselves and to
Right.
become adult thinkers.
And from the adolescent perspective,
Right.
to be independent of you means to believe differently than you.
That's right. That's right.
So they're going to
They
go
have
that
to be
opposite.
theirs.
Right.
It has to be their systems. You're not going to argue about the facts. You're going to argue about the opinions. But you can. Let's take an easier one. Your spouse. What if your spouse has a different sports team? A different.
Well, she wouldn't be my spouse.
You have to throw. What if she cheered for Tottenham? Does Chelsea play Tottenham? Do they ever play each
Richard,
other?
let's not have this conversation here. We'll have to save it for later.
See what beliefs
because
do? You see? This is. No. Do
already
they
talked
play
to-
each other?
Yes.
Okay. So if your wife cheered for Tottenham, what would happen?
It wouldn't happen.
You have to you have to enjoy those differences. Imagine how much fun you would have. If she would No?
No?
Jeez.
Well, my son is, let's have a more realistic thing. My son is a Manchester United fan. Of course he is. Why wouldn't he be? They have Zlatan. Whatever. But so we watch those matches
Zlatan.
together.
It sounds like some No, it sounds like somebody from another planet. He's Zoitan from...
Zlatan.
He's Zlatan from Plutonia.
You know, what's funny? What's funny is that the listeners out there, they all know who Zlatan Ibrahimovic is. And
No.
Write to me. Let me know that you know who he is. And
See what I mean about facts?
We'll see how many responses we get. I'll feel bad if you guys don't respond.
Zlatan is from Mars.
But we'll enjoy those. We'll enjoy those matches together.
Man U.
Right. We'll enjoy those matches together. It is tense, but we enjoy those matches together. But
Wait a minute. You're saying that your son likes Man U and you like Chelsea.
Correct.
And when they play each other,
right,
he's rooting for one team and you're rooting for the other. And
correct,
you just said we enjoy those matches.
Right.
That's my point.
Yeah.
You can enjoy that. There's no need to get angry.
It would be different if you liked Tottenham, but
of course, okay. if Chelsea loses, then you have to hit him, right? You have to punish him. No, that's what I'm saying. Enjoy the differences. So your house divided. My gosh, imagine the fun you can have. Mm-hmm. Okay, enjoying these kind of belief systems.
When you saw our Christmas tree a couple of years ago, we had our Christmas tree split down the middle, and one side was blue for Chelsea, and the other side was red for Man United. I should post that picture again. That was a few years ago. But you're right, and it's important that we enjoy those differences. But it's also the reason why when we're teaching our kids things, right, when we're teaching them about religion, when we're teaching them about some of these different belief systems, mm-hmm, politics, or whatever the case may be, mm-hmm, we want to teach them that these are opinions, these are beliefs, these are our feelings, this is what we think. When we begin to, one of the things that teens buck against, mm-hmm, is the idea that, when you tell them something is a fact, and then they find something that disproves it as a fact, they're going to challenge you. This is what happens with
marijuana.
Right.
It's a perfect example of something that was not, in fact, marijuana is not a gateway drug for everybody. Right. It is a gateway drug for some.
Right.
Okay, but it's not for everybody. And so when parents try to scare their children, mm-hmm, into not, mm-hmm, using it, and then the kids say, well, everybody I know uses, everybody I know smokes weed.
Right.
They're probably telling you the truth.
Right.
At some level, some smoke a lot and some smoke a little, but, mm-hmm, I'll bet they're right.
Right.
Almost everybody does.
Yeah.
So the science says something very different. Mm-hmm. Okay. But what we have to stop, what I'm asking people to do is stop damaging relationships because of your belief systems. Right. It's not worth doing that. It's not worth having these religious wars. Right. We all agree that it's not worth having these religious wars. It's not worth having a war in your own family over these opinions or beliefs.
Yeah, I remember what got us onto this when we were talking and planning some topics for the podcast is we were talking about, I talked about my brother that, like 20 years ago or something. He had just graduated high school and he was looking to start applying, mm-hmm, for jobs and things like that. And around that same time, he was starting to get a few tattoos and some piercings and things like that. I said, hey man, it might be a good idea to hold off on some of that stuff until after you get a job or you start working, because when you go in and apply for a job, they're going to see that. And he says, true, and he's correct. They shouldn't judge me based upon how I look or how I dress or anything like that. And he's absolutely right. We all agree. That's a belief.
That's right. It's his opinion.
It's not a fact.
My opinion is they shouldn't.
Right. But the reality is,
fact,
I say that the fact is, we do judge people by the way that they look.
That's right.
And not everybody. Right. So I wouldn't say it's a fact, like all the way to the extreme left, but it is. It approximates that.
You're moving toward the fact column,
right,
the fact side of that spectrum, mm-hmm, in an issue like that.
Right.
The fact is that most do.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and especially the types of jobs that he was applying for at the time.
That's right.
It may be different in construction, and it may be different.
If you want to do construction or lawn maintenance or work in a fast food kitchen somewhere.
Right. A place where you're where the way in which you present it is not influencing customers and things like that, that's going to affect the business.
Right.
So, but again, the idea was that was a belief that he had, which I think is a very good belief, because he's absolutely right. It shouldn't happen. But again, the reality is that many times, very often, it does.
Yeah, another example that one of these writers used was, it's okay to be 10 minutes late to a baseball game. Mm-hmm. It's not okay to be 10 minutes late to an interview, to a job interview.
Right.
Okay, so context does matter.
Right.
Okay, and what you're saying to him is you're perfectly entitled to your belief, and it's perfectly acceptable. You know, if you go to a place like Oakland, California, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, Austin, Texas, that might be okay there.
Right.
Okay. Central Florida, different place.
Different place, right?
Different customs. Different,
Yeah.
Okay. So you need to think about these things. You're absolutely entitled to your opinion.
Right.
But you also have to recognize that this is how it's going to be judged by others.
Yep.
And, maybe it should or shouldn't, doesn't matter.
Right.
It is.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, all right.
We need to
That's
talk
it
more
for
about
today.
this. I really would love to hear from readers about this topic.
Listeners, they're not reading this.
Oh, they're not readers.
Right.
Well, they probably are literate, but they're not reading this. They're listening to it.
That's correct.
Some people are watching it.
That's true, but they're still listening.
Yes.
They could watch it, but not listen. But that would be awkward, because then, it'd be like a Mystery Science 3000 thing. That would be awesome. Oh, that'd be so cool if people did that. Like,
they could watch us
dubbed
and
it.
not hear us. And
Yeah,
then guess what
and
we're
then,
talking about.
Yeah, and then kind of dubbed over.
They could do the dialogue.
That would be awesome. We could just sit here and say watermelon the whole time,
It's
and then
only
they would
Tuesday.
fill it in.
It's only Tuesday.
Or recording on Tuesday.
But don't be thrown by this stuff about this alternative fact business. There are no alternative facts.
That's true.
Okay, there's evidence,
Right.
but there are no alternative facts.
Right.
But please, most of all, don't damage relationships over what really are opinions and belief systems. It's not
Absolutely.
worth damaging your family relationships, partner relationships, or parent-child relationships because of opinions and beliefs.
That's
Okay.
true. That's a true fact. All right.
That's right.
So
It's the
that's
truth. It's actual. Everything is satisfactory.
zippity doo dah. All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.